Here in the UK, over the last few years, it's become clear that we might not actually be that good at building stuff. The government scrapped the HS2 rail project last year due to its spiralling costs. Investment in city metro networks and tram networks lags behind the rest of Europe, and the Hinkley Point C nuclear power station remains over budget and late. Britain used to be a great pioneer when it came to infrastructure. London is home to the oldest and one of the most expansive underground networks in the world, and Britain has one of the oldest national railways. The Victorian era heralded in a new era of industrial revolution. So it's worth asking, where exactly did this all go wrong? And how did we get so much worse at building? Now, it's worth starting this video by explaining exactly how infrastructure projects are commissioned and run here in the UK. Back in 2012, the UK government introduced the Infrastructure Planning Commission, or IPC, which became responsible for any proposed nationally significant infrastructure projects, or NSIPs, in England and Wales. Now, the bar for nationally significant is actually not terribly high. Major rail and power station projects obviously fall into this category. However, even relatively small road connections somehow also do. Local councils are responsible for building small infrastructure projects, such as roundabouts. However, larger ones fall within the remit of the IPC. Weirdly, even something as seemingly simple as upgrading a single-track road to a dual carriageway is classified as a nationally significant infrastructure project, meaning that it has to go through the IPC. This is what happened to the A428, which connects Milton Keynes to Cambridge. Back in 2003, a regional transport study suggested that a 15-kilometre stretch of road should be upgraded to a dual carriageway. If things go to plan, this new road will be completed and opened in 2026, 23 years later. Now, this is one of the key reasons that infrastructure just doesn't get built. The process causes unnecessary delays, slows down building, and subsequently pushes prices up, which ultimately disincentivizes future infrastructure projects. The IPC is a non-departmental public body, meaning that while it's publicly funded, it's not part of the government, and is instead subject to scrutiny from Parliament. The body does, however, provide a recommendation to the Secretary of State, who then decides whether to proceed. The whole process is expected to take 18 months. However, unfortunately, these decisions are often late. Analysis has shown that of all the NSIPs in the last 10 years, 29% were delayed, and the average delay was 7 months. Unfortunately too, the average delay time and the percentage of projects delayed is getting longer and larger as time goes on. The average delay has increased from 17 months in 2012 to 22 months in 2020, and the percentage of projects delayed rose from 20% between 2012 and 2016 to 43% from 2017 onwards. And the thing is, delays on massive infrastructure projects can get very expensive very quickly. Inflation is obviously a key factor in this, and this has only been made worse in recent years because of global events like the pandemic and the cost of living crisis. The effect of this is that infrastructure construction costs rose by 25% between just January 2020 and September 2023 alone. So part of the high cost is simply down to the fact that projects are delayed and get more expensive as a result. But why are they getting delayed in the first place? Well, this is largely down to a failure of politics, specifically the fact that national policy statements are just not being updated. Now, national policy statements effectively set out the government's policy for NSIPs, and is something that developers use as a blueprint for their projects. So, if you're building a railway, you check the government's national policy statement for national networks to make sure that your plans align with what the government wants. They're meant to be updated every 5 years, but haven't been, no doubt in part due to the high churn of ministers in this time, and this has caused some pretty serious problems. For example, since the government last produced its national policy statement on roads in 2015, the Transport Secretary has said that we will use our cars differently and less often, and local councils have set out emissions targets. This means that legal challenges can be brought against projects that actually do meet criteria set out in national policy statements. And, well, this is something we've seen. Between 2010 and 2020, there were 16 judicial reviews of infrastructure planning decisions, and only one was successful. Since 2021, there have been 7, and 4 of these were successful. This means that developers have to sort of guess at what the government wants, and they have to put in a lot more effort to make sure that they aren't subject to costly legal challenges. This not only simply costs more money to produce, but also delays the project even further, in turn raising the costs further. So it's clear that there are a lot of interconnected bureaucratic reasons that infrastructure projects end up being so expensive here in the UK. And well, this has meant that all kinds of infrastructure in the UK has ended up being more expensive than our European counterparts. And in some cases, the UK has opted to simply not even embark on the projects in the first place. Take trams, for instance. The UK is home to the largest city in Western Europe that does not have a metro system, Leeds. There was a plan to build the Leeds Supertram network, but this was cancelled in 2005 after estimates put the cost of the project at about £1.6 billion. Just to be clear, had this estimate been accurate, it would have meant that it was almost twice as expensive per mile as the average French tramway. Even infrastructure projects that are viewed as successful cost far more than other countries. For example, the Elizabeth Line, or Crossrail, was opened back in 2022 and is now the busiest railway in Britain. However, even despite this, it cost a phenomenal £1.392 billion per mile. Only the New York subway can beat it on this price tag. When you consider that Madrid was able to build 81 miles of its subway network at only £68 million per mile, it becomes apparent just how expensive Crossrail's price tag actually is. So the question is, what should the UK do to fix this? Well, some believe that part of the solution is simply increasing investment. The National Infrastructure Commission claims that the UK needs to increase both its public and private sector investment from about £55 billion per year to between £70 billion and £80 billion. This is a significant increase and would be the largest increase since the Second World War. This would no doubt help Britain start to catch up with other comparable nations when it comes to infrastructure. Additionally, Sam Dimitriou, head of policy for Britain Remade, argues that, while there is no easy solution, a good start would be updating national policy statements, something that would at least start to ease the bureaucracy that stops the UK from building more. Perhaps the best outcome then would be a combination of the two. The first allowing for more infrastructure to be built, and the second making it quicker and easier for said infrastructure to be built.